Again, thank you all for coming. We have Dr. Robert Braswell here. He is going to present this great mental health workshop for us. Again, just so if you guys are not familiar with chat, we are a group that is up and coming. We're starting out small, but the idea is to expand and get bigger, at least in this area. And CHAT stands for Community Health Advocate Trainers, right? So we're all about empowering you, the people, to take care of your own body. Or, as I like to say, be the CEO of your own body, right? So we're going to be doing more programs. We have some cooking classes coming up. We have a program called Diabetes Undone. And we have some more mental health programs. I think in this area, substance abuse and mental health issues are one of the big issues. So we definitely know that's a great need out here. So without any further delay, man of the hour, Dr. Robert, thank you so much for doing this for us.
It's good to be here with you to be able to talk about a really exciting topic. And I want to tell you first of all that I love my mother. And you'll see why as I mention that, because although she has shown me love and kindness and encouragement over the years, a good work ethic, forgiveness when I failed and disappointed her, and I hope that I've emulated some of those qualities, I've noticed over the decades in life that there's something very different between me and her that concerns me. And I want to share that with you, and I think that this entire generation will be able to relate to that. And so as we talk, I think you'll be in one category or another. More like my mother or more like me. And you can tell us, and we'll see how that works out. I encourage participation as we go through section by section. So this is kind of an audience participation event. So my mother grew up in a small town in North Carolina, southeast North Carolina. It's called Hallsborough, North Carolina. One of these towns where there's a dirt road. And as people drove by, the dirt was kicking up the dust in the dirt road, and people would wave and say hello. I didn't know who they were, but I was from the city, but okay, they'd wave hello, I'll say wave hello too. I grew up in the city, Jersey City, which is kind of a large city, densely populated. And if you said hello to someone who didn't know you, they would think there's something very strange about you. And so you learn to not say hello to people. Where she grew up, they had lots of land, they had about 10 acres of land. And at least an acre of it was garden. They had watermelons, they had butter beans, they had collard greens, they had all these kinds of things to eat. I thought food came from the store. That's where I got it, including junk food. It doesn't matter where you got it, came from the store. And so as we talk about each of these areas of good health, and I'll name each one of them, we want to talk about this contrast between generations, because it really makes a difference for us to kind of take a step back to maybe a generation ago or two. You may have a grandmother or mother who used to live like mine, eat healthier food, and then over time things changed. So let's use my mom, and maybe yours as well, as a kind of reference point. I also want to give credit to the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. They provide some of the slides. They're an excellent organization to belong to and to look to. And they have some information that I can mention to you later on that you may find very interesting, even as far as finding a lifestyle physician if you decide to do that. So there are 6 pillars, if you will, of health that we find refer to in lifestyle medicine. And they put the title here, A Stable Platform, Lifestyle, Purpose, Faith, and Resilience, and you'll see why in a moment. Thank you. And so there's 6 ways to take control of your health. Actually, there are more. I'm going to mention some other things there, but that's the framework that we're going to use to start off with. And those things are nutrition, physical activity, restorative sleep, stress management, social connection, and avoidance of risky substances. And those things probably sound kind of obvious, but we want to take a deep dive into some of them. And some of these things you know already, and some of these things may be a little bit of a surprise to you. And so again, look at my mother and myself, and many of us here, so you can put yourself in my mom's category or mine, depending on how old you are and where you grew up. Let's talk about nutrition. As I mentioned, My mother grew up in a area, in dirt road in North Carolina, and they had about an acre's worth of good, healthy, fresh food that her mother planted and watered every day and took care of. And so the family had these fresh food every day. That was pretty much what they had. Occasionally they'd have to walk to town and get some flour and some cornmeal and so forth. But mostly it was right there in their own backyard. They had chickens, which not only provided eggs, but also provided meat itself. And I won't go into detail about how the chicken got from the chicken coop to their dinner table, but they got there. They had hogs, and likewise, hogs got from out there, I remember this, and somehow they got to the dinner table, use your own imagination. But whether it was meat or vegetables, it was fresh. It was whole food that had not been treated with any sort of antibiotics or other chemicals or things that they just didn't do back then, that things are often done today. And so this was fresh, healthy food. We'll talk about eating meat and what kind of meat to eat and so forth, but it still was whole food. And in many ways, no matter what it was better than what we eat today. Today, or even when I was growing up, we have all sorts of things that they didn't have back then. And one of the ways you can know something is not such great food is what's on the label. Are there things there that your mother or grandmother has never heard of? I'm sure that's the case with me. If you see EDTA, your grandmother probably didn't know what it was. If you see propylene glycol, was not probably part of my mother's diet. If you heard of various kinds of gums and additives and so forth, blue number 2 and yellow number 5, all these things are really additives that have come along fairly recently. And so what's so remarkable to me, and I've seen this with my friends, my wife, and so forth, is that in one single generation, we've gone from people who have a natural diet, fruits and vegetables, things you get right out of the farm, cooked fresh, to a diet that has a lot of junk food, a lot of processed food, and even quote health food. If you look at the label there are lots of things that most people don't know and that probably aren't very good for us. Even things that are supposedly health food or healthier really are not that good for you. And so in our discussion, we want to include healthy living and that starts with nutrition. So you can see it there in your handout and on the screen there. Extensive scientific evidence supports the use of a whole food, predominantly plant-based diet as an important strategy in prevention of chronic disease, treatment of chronic conditions, and in intensive therapeutic doses, remission of chronic illness. This eating pattern is fiber-filled, nutrient-dense, and antioxidant-rich. It consists of a variety of minimally processed vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds. So what happened? How did we go from one generation to another and have such a drastic difference between the way my mother ate and the way I ate? Well, a couple of things. First of all, I grew up in the city. We didn't have a big backyard to have food in, and so that was part of the issue. Number 2, the pace of life. Things got busier, and I was in school and so forth, and there's a different kind of pace that people live in. And so people started to look for junk food, something they could grab quickly. There was no McDonald's in Hallsborough, North Carolina. There were several in Jersey City, New Jersey, and you all know what I mean here. And so all these things contribute to something very, very important, what we put into our bodies. We'll talk about this a little bit more, but realize it's not just food that we eat, but water that we drink. My mother, I was talking with her, and she said that they used to have a well, those wells down south, sometimes smell like a little sulfur in there, but then they got a pump, and I remember those old pumps, you pumped water out, and that water was good. It was clean and it tasted good. Excuse me. And so a lot has changed from getting water from a nice clean well to drinking water out of plastic bottles. And there's a lot, these things that we talk about, and we'd love to talk about them now or afterwards, such that we've gone from clean water to water that is contaminated with plastic. And that's really an unfortunate thing. Scientists have found that even in heart muscle and other places in the body, we now have plastic there. Not to get anyone too excited or nervous about that, but that's the reality. And so even what you put your water in these days is very important. Again, we can go into more details about that. Physical activity. Okay. So regular and consistent physical activity combats the negative effects of sedentary behavior. It is important that adults engage in both general physical activity as well as purposeful exercise on a weekly basis as part of overall health and resiliency. Aim for at least 150 minutes per week. Now, if we went into more detail, we could talk about things you might see on your exercise bicycle, like Metz and Watts and so forth. That's more detail. But basically, 150 per week of aerobic exercise is a good goal to set. Now, why is this so important? Well, it goes deeper, more than just cardiovascular health. And it goes deeper than more than walking or jogging and running. A big part of exercise that we don't talk enough about include weight training. Now, lots of people do lift weights, but why is it so important? Stretching, but why is it so important? Balance, why is it so important? All these things we want to include in our physical activity, and again, I hope that we can take a deep dive into that. Number 3, restorative sleep. Sleep is one of the gems here, and although we want to do all these things, if let's say you have a lifestyle that's just not very good, the first thing I would suggest, if you can only do one thing, is get more sleep. Because sleep does some very special things in your body. I'm old enough to remember I'm from New York, New Jersey area, remember some of the garbage strikes, the sanitation worker strikes in New York City. And it may be worth it for a little bit of information there, taking a look at some of the Google, New York City sanitation strike. There, in New York City is a big city, it produces lots of garbage, and there were garbage bags and things that just lined the streets in various places in New York City. You may remember some of that, or at least seen photos of it. So what does that have to do with sleep? Well, sleep does more important things. We don't just feel better when we wake up, but it has effects on our hormonal system. It has effects on our brains. It has effects on our muscles. As an example, one of the most important things is that when we get enough sleep, our brain gets into a sort of different mode. It kind of slows down, but there are certain cells that sort of clean up the garbage. Our cells are constantly breaking down and building up and breaking down and building up. It's just part of life, whether it's muscle cells or brain cells, whatever the case is. And so there are cells in the brain that go and find the junk there, they're sort of the refuse, the broken down proteins. There's these various things that are not good for our brains, but it's just part of life. It's just part of what happens as cells move along. And so at night is a really great time for these small cells to go and clean up the junk. And that's just part of our bodies. If we don't get enough sleep, there's not enough time for those little cells, part of the garbage collection system, if you will, to clean out those things. And therefore, that puts us at more risk, brain-wise, for problems later down. That doesn't mean 1 night or 2 nights not scared of sleep, but the typical American probably gets less than 6 hours of sleep, some even worse. And I have to admit that sometimes I'm part of that category. But most, and some other people as well.
I'll put 2 hands up.
But most Americans probably should get 7 to 9 hours sleep. So if you're a busy person, you might say 7 to 9 hours sleep. Well, but that's what it is. Children, as you can naturally tell, need even more sleep and probably should get 10 or 11 or 12, and even more when they're very, very young as infants. But even our teenagers should get probably 10 hours sleep. Most of them don't. If you have kids, you know that. But that's how much sleep we need. During that time, again, our brains are getting rid of the junk, our muscles are healing. So if you work out, you lift weights, whatever you do, that's the time when the muscle actually builds. So your muscle doesn't build while you work out. You kind of tear it down. It's when you're sleeping, you're resting, that's actually when new muscle cells, within the muscle cells, new material there gets in there and actually it gets stronger. So sleep is very important for our brain, for our bodies. It affects our hormonal system. It does a lot. And as I spoke with my mother, I said, well, how was sleep out there? Was it quiet? Did you guys get a lot of sleep? She said, oh yes, it was very quiet. They went to bed at 8 o'clock at night. They got up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I said, okay, well, they were kids then. What about your parents? They said, yeah, they did too. 8 o'clock at night, and they got up in the morning at about 6 o'clock. I suppose it's because back then they didn't have TVs and they didn't have cell phones. And I guess there wasn't a lot to do. And I recall sometimes when I was out there, when my family and I went down there in the summer, we had a nice day, and after a while, with no TV, there wasn't much to do after about 8 o'clock. So once the sun went down and you had enough time talking with folks, you just went to sleep and got this wonderful sleep, and the only noise might be frogs or crickets or something in the background. And you wake up really refreshed. Sleep is really important, restorative sleep. All right, I should also mention that when you sleep, your blood pressure goes down, your heart rate goes down, your body temperature goes down, and we can talk more about how to get good sleep. Stress management, or stress reduction. Again, maybe if I had to only pick two things to improve, I would say sleep and then stress reduction. I say that because when people are stressed, it's just not natural for us to be constantly stressed. The natural way to be stressed is if there's an emergency, your adrenaline gets going, your cortisol gets going, you run really fast to run away from danger, or maybe you're chasing down the city bus and you got to get going really quickly, and then you get on the bus and it's, okay, now you relax. Well, these days we have stress that looks like pieces of paper, right? And computers and cell phones. And we have this artificial kind of stress that keeps the adrenaline going and the cortisol up in a very unnatural way, such that our bodies are under a level of hormonal experience that's not good. And that can cause damage to our muscles, to our brains, to other parts of our bodies. Unfortunately, people get, for example, people get ulcers. Why is that? It's probably because of stress, the way the stress affects gastric secretion, just as one example. The chronic stress of modern society has made it more difficult to practice healthy lifestyle habits and can exacerbate health issues such as cardiovascular disease, insulin resistance, sleep deprivation, depression, anxiety, weight gain, and more. Recognizing and replacing negative stress responses with healthy coping mechanisms and stress reduction techniques leads to improved well-being. People sometimes say, and I've talked to patients, and it sounds as though people are kind of discouraged. In other words, how can you overcome stress? Without getting into politics, people have different views of it, but probably no matter who is in the administration or who the president is or what's going on, whether it was years ago or currently, people feel stressed. Sometimes people feel stressed by the news. People feel stressed by things that are beyond our control. They may not be in our neighborhood, maybe just stressed about how things are going in the world. It's not hard for us to feel stress by these things that we don't have control over, that we're not directly involved with. So how can you get away from it? I hope again we'll take a deep dive into some things, and I'd like to teach you a very basic technique that helps reduce stress, that you can do any place at any time. And actually it dovetails with sleep, and I'd like to tell you about my experience with, maybe this way, the dog in 29 Palms, California, and much more recently, sleeping in a hotel while doing local tenants, that's temporary work that doctors do, right near the freeway. And despite those noises, using a very simple technique, I was able to reduce the stress and get lots of rest. Not hard, it's easy to do. Social connection. Now, maybe this is the number one thing, I'm not sure. They're all really, as I think about it. I recently, I'm very glad for it, joined this organization called the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And by the way, if you go to their website, if you want to find a lifestyle provider, medical provider, you can go there and find a doctor, find a lifestyle provider, and you can find one in your area and become that person's patient. They also recommend that you stick with your own doctor, your regular primary care doctor, but this person can help augment your medical treatment. And so I did, as part of my training process, a lifestyle medicine approach to how you take care of a patient, but I did it myself. See how that worked. And I did terrible. I absolutely flunked. And I thought, well, this is terrible. I'm trying to do this, trying to get my own act together here and be a healthier person. And I wanted to swim a certain amount. I'd like to swim. No, I don't like, so I swim, I don't like it that much. It gets boring. And I wanted to lift some weights or do some body weight exercise, eat better, sleep more, all these things. I had these goals. I thought, well, in a couple of weeks I'll improve, another couple of weeks I'll get better and better. And I flunked at almost everything. I went wrong here. Well, this was kind of the crux of it for me. I learned something about myself that I knew a little bit about before, but I didn't realize as much until after that experience, and it was social connection. Sometimes when you have to do things that are good to do, but we don't quite feel like it, the missing part is social connection, or even accountability. And so that's something that's so important. And the folks at Harvard who've done years of studying about people who going through life, they look at all the other factors, divide them into two groups. They looked at those who had social connections, very close relationships, and those who didn't. And they would tell you in this study that the number one thing that determines health, longevity, good living, when you set everything else on equal plane, is social connection. We see that in other countries, very famously in Okinawa, Japan, for example, and other places as well. And so maybe this is number one, I'm not sure. But social connection, positive social connections affect our physical, mental, and emotional health. Leveraging the power of relationships and social networks can bring meaning and purpose to life, while also helping to reinforce healthy behaviors. Excuse me. Part of social connection is accountability. So for someone to say, okay, Rob, why don't you get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and go out and swim? Now, why would I want to do that? Especially if it's cold outside, like in Michigan where I'm from. Well, but you know what? When you have the accountability, when you know that someone else is relying on you, then it's much easier to get up and have someone kind of mentally, the mental image of that person saying, hey, I'm glad you did that. So later on in the day, they're going to ask you, did you go out and swim? Did you go out and run? Did you eat a healthy diet there? Whatever the case might be. Accountability is what we're designed for. We're designed for a relationship. And so that's why I suggest that in all these things, as you're trying to improve your lifestyle, have at least one person, unless you're an extremely disciplined person, have at least one person who will be your accountability partner. Who will say, hey, look, you told me you're going to go swimming every morning at 6 o'clock and do those laps. Did you go today? Yeah, I didn't want to, but I did. And then the days you didn't, there's got to be someone who loves you. But then when you don't, they can kind of get in your case. And when these folks that really loves you, and you can take some heat from them and you won't be discouraged. Same thing with diet. Same thing with getting enough sleep. Same thing with stress management, whatever the case is. So social connection, we're designed for, and that's what we should make sure that we do. And that I found out, that was at the bottom of my conclusion of my own assessment here, that the reason I didn't do very well is because I didn't have accountability. I didn't have good social connection in each of these things. So I went to the pool by myself. I was going to do push-ups by myself. I was going to go to sleep at the right time, but I didn't end up doing so. I was going to eat more vegetables, but I didn't do so. And now what I do is rely on social connection to do that. So I have an accountability partner. He and I pray together, and we set goals together. And I can say to him, hey, did you do this? He says, well, not yet. Look, you got to do this. And he asked me to do the same kind of thing, and that kind of gets me into gear. So social connection, again, it goes according to the Harvard people, this is the most important thing that we need for good health. Let me mention about, before going to avoidance of risky substances, that if you ever look at the blue zones, it's a very interesting group of people. There's a man named Dan Buettner who teamed up with National Geographic, and they decided to find where are the healthiest people in the world, where do these people live? And so they had a map of the world, and they decided to just have a blue ink pen or something, and they drew a circle here, a circle there, and they decided to call them blue zones. And they're places like Loma Linda, California, and Okinawa, Japan, in places in Italy and Greece and South America, and Costa Rica. So they're very interesting to read about, and a lot of what you will see in this discussion here, which is part of the way that the American College of Lifestyle Medicine thinks of this, a lot of those things you'll see in those blue zones. So these are places where people live to their 80s and 90s, and not just live long lives, but very healthy ones. So you have the 80-year-old who's out chopping wood, or the 85-year-old who's out tending sheep. And they're very active and moving around. And my mother's like that. She doesn't take the bus very much, so maybe she needs to, but she will walk to the store a mile away and walk back. She will do so with a cart. So she'll be taking along a cart to get some flowers or vegetables or food. And so there's this natural part of lifestyle. My mother-in-law's like this. She's like the sort of energized abundance. She's just kind of moving and just kind of moving naturally. So it's in our society today, we tend to, if we do get exercise, it tends to be a very circumscribed thing. I go to the YMCA at this time, or I go to my gym class at this time, and there we are. And that's good. We should make sure that we do that. But if we can include a life in our lifestyle, a little more natural motion, standing up more, parking your car someplace away from the store, so you get a few more steps in on the way there. Maybe putting on a remote control and walking over to the TV, if you still can, and change the channel, those kind of things. Those kind of things, that natural kind of motion, like my mother-in-law does out in the garden and so forth, like my mother does, walking to the store, dragging along a cart there before she gets on the bus. Those kinds of natural, that kind of natural motion, that kind of natural activity is part of healthy living. Let's talk about avoidance of risky substances. And there are more risky substances than we might naturally think of. We think of alcohol and tobacco, usually. We think about drugs, cocaine and other stimulants, amphetamines, opioids and other downers and so forth. We think about the opioid crisis or epidemic of recent years. Well, let me read this here, and then I'm going to suggest some other ones that we may not think about. Use of tobacco and excessive alcohol consumption has been shown to increase the risk of chronic diseases and death. Treatments often take time, different approaches, and many attempts. Patience and support are an important part of breaking risky substance habits, and that's certainly the case. As a psychiatrist, I've worked with a lot of patients who had substance abuse issues, worked recently in a rehabilitation center for eating disorders as well as substance use disorders. And you have people who come back time after time sometimes. They relapse, they try again, and they relapse, and it's a very sad thing to see, but the good news is that they try again and again. And with each time they learn. Some people quit and they're sober for the rest of their lives. Other people have tried 3 or 4 or 5 times. And we encourage them just to keep trying. So in other words, these risky substances are so addicting that people do what they would not normally do. People do things that are uncharacteristic, get in a lot of trouble. So if you don't use those things, don't start. If you do, by any chance, or if you know someone who does, encourage them to get professional help to do that, maybe even check into a rehabilitation center to be able to overcome those things. But now risky substances aren't just drugs and alcohol. How about those water bottles? How about the plastic bottles? Is that a risky substance? Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it is. It's not something that we talk about a lot, we see about, but if you can get, if you go to the store and you can get nice glass jars, we try to use those home glass gallon bottles, that's good. Risky substances, how about pollution in our air? How about pollution and maybe in the water, depending on your water source is? It's important for us to look around our whole environment and say, is this healthy or not? Is what I'm breathing okay? Is what I'm wearing okay? Is what I put my water in okay? So we have to look at our environment. It's much more complex these days, and look at it in a big picture way and say, what's in my body, whether I'm breathing it, eating it, and so forth, that might be risky, and lean towards those things that are healthier. In my mother's case, there wasn't much out there to be that concerned about. I don't think they had water. I think they got water from as she mentioned, from the well or from the pump, and put it in a glass or something and drank it. They didn't have plastic bottles. They didn't have much air pollution. The air was pretty clean out there. These things, because of convenience and the way things go over time, we have much more to be concerned about. Let me make sure I mention something that's important that most people probably don't think about, and that is, it's worth looking at, radon gas. Lots of homes in our country have radon, which is a radioactive gas that you find at ground level. And I encourage you all to take the time to get a good radon testing kit at your, well, radon is a natural gas in the earth. And when you build a house, there may be radon gas just at that location, such that you may have it there, maybe your next door neighbor has it, or doesn't have it. It just depends on how much concentration there is at that particular place. So I don't think it's this area of the country has more than other necessarily. It just may be kind of random where it is or is not. And so we've had, usually when a house is built, a new house is built, you use radon gas. You get the testing kit, and that should be part of the inspection of the house. And if not, but you should test it every now and then. I recommend once a year. When my family and I moved to Michigan, we started off, stayed in a rental house, and we thought, why don't we just check the radon gas? So let's just see if it's there. We checked it, and it was just at the border of the, where they would say it's too much. And so we said, okay, well, we don't really like this. We're going to put in a device there that gets the radon gas, it scoops it out from underneath the house, pumps it out through the house into the air, and it's gone there. And then the radon level came down low. So that's something we don't talk about, but radon gas is, you can have enough radon gas in your home such that it's almost like smoking, depending on how high it is. So again, one of these risky substances that we might not usually think about, but that is there, and especially as we spend more time indoors, that becomes even more relevant issue. We're usually indoors, usually the windows are closed, there's not much ventilation, and so radon gas becomes one of these. It may seem like an arbitrary or kind of want to add on things, but it's actually really important.
I'm sorry, you can just get these kits like random, like.
You can get them at most hardware stores. You can go online, and there's some that are supposed to be higher quality than others, but you can go to your average hardware store, or you go to Lowe's, Home Depot, places like that, and get a good quality one. And then you put them in a number of places in your house. Best place is down low, where the gas level will be higher. But we like putting them in your bedroom too, everyone's bedroom. The more the better, to see if there's any radon gas that's going to that place. It takes a few days, and the way to do is when you put it in there when you're going to go out for, maybe for a few days. Everyone's going to go out of the house, maybe on a short vacation. Close up those doors and see how much radon gas accumulates in those places. So risky substances get more complex as the world goes along, but hopefully to be forewarned is to be forearmed, and we can do our best with those things. Now, we can take a deep dive, I'm doing time-wise, we can take a deep dive into this. I'd like to know if anybody here has any particular thing they'd like to talk about more. There's more to talk about each subject. Cooking classes are a great thing to do, for example, and other things. But I can share more with you if I get an idea of what kind of things people might be interested in. Otherwise, I'll just dive in more with things that I think are important. Okay, we'll just dive in.
Sorry, was you open it up for questions, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go back and talk about nutrition a little bit more. And I think you have some handouts. And let's start with that first one that says nutrition. And there it is there. And this one's not easy. I don't want to linger on how much I enjoy brownies, for example, or chocolate. But maybe not everyone, but most of us have something that we like to eat that's not the best thing to eat. This doesn't mean that you never ever eat a brownie or have some ice cream, but this means that it's not a staple food. This means it's something that you maybe have as a treat, let's say once a week. We really need to trim those things down, because most of the things that people like for nutrition these days or for enjoyment really don't have much substance to them. They're really mostly sugar. The first or maybe the second ingredient is sugar. And as you read the labels, it may not say always is more of one than the other, but that first thing on the label, as you read through this little paragraph almost of ingredients, the first thing should be what's mostly there. The second thing is what's next, the next quantity of things there. And the fact of the matter is, sugar is either the first or the second in most things. That tells you right there, it's probably not good food for you. Also, the fact that this list is long says that's probably not good for you either. There are probably a lot of things in there that, again, our grandmothers never heard of and not very good for us. So this is not to say you don't eat any of those things, but you have to be a very disciplined person to try to avoid those things. And also, it's important as we change habits, not to just say, I'm going to stop doing this and that's it. I'll just be a very disciplined person and that's all there is to it. When we get rid of something that's not good for us, let's put in something in its place that we really like that will help us. So maybe instead of eating that extra brownie, maybe you like grapes or oranges or something that you can get used to and that you enjoy. That'll help you change the balance from less healthy food to more healthy food. So let's consider some of the things here on nutrition. Sugar is maybe one of the most dangerous things that we can eat. It does things it damages blood vessels, including the small blood vessels like the eyes, the kidneys. It is empty nutrition, it's empty calories, so you're really not getting anything out of it. You are taking calories that you could use for eating healthy food and eating it and just losing your appetite for healthy stuff. So you're not getting the things that you really need the most. And we find it in all sorts of things. Soda, cocktails, sweetened coffee, energy drinks, etc. Processed meats. I mentioned my mother, they had some hogs back then, and so although hogs might not be the healthiest food, at least it was not processed. These days, it's even worse because most things are processed with nitrates and nitrites and other things that keep them on the shelf or keep them in the refrigerator in the store longer. And so those things have been linked with cancer, for example. Anything that in other words, we can't improve on nature, if you will. If we're going to add things to it, to preserve things, they're probably not very good. Sausage, bacon, salami, and so forth. Processed snacks, okay? Crackers and chips and pretzels. Cakes, pastries, sweets. A lot of times we have those as special occasions. Well, if you go to people's homes, it's a special occasion because of someone's birthday. It's a special occasion because someone graduated. There are a lot of special occasions that come along. Now there's a little bit of cake on this special occasion. Well, there's another special occasion next week and the following week, and the middle of the week. So again, you have to really decide what is going to be a special occasion enough, and replace those foods with things that you really enjoy. Dairy. Now let's get a little controversial here. When you talk to people about healthy food, some people say you should be a vegan. Some people say, well, you should eat meat, and meat's healthier for you, and a vegan diet's not good for you. I can tell you that if we look at people historically, if we look at the blue zones, for example, if we look at those who eat meat, historically, meat was a small part of their diet. For example, Okinawans, who were eating healthy diet, lots of vegetables, soybeans, and so forth, they eat meat as well, but it's a fairly small part of it. Same thing with people in other parts of the world. Meat is actually a kind of a treat. It's not something that people had every day. And when it comes to chickens, for example, they were smaller then. They were not raised with steroids to make them bigger. They were kind of skinny and scrawny, and so having a chicken for dinner is not like eating a really large piece of meat. It was just kind of a small thing that families would have as a treat to add to their diet. So realize that fruits and vegetables have lots of nutrition in there. Beans are some of the best foods you eat for fiber, for protein, for carbohydrate. And so we don't need a lot of meat. Now some people would come in and say, you're absolutely wrong. This is the way we were designed. We should eat lots of meat. It does get a little controversial. I think the proof in the pudding is not just science, but look at the people in the world who live the longest. So what is it? Not just scientific evidence, but what's the time-tested evidence? I think that the time-tested evidence is what Grandma did, or what the Blue Zones did. They ate some meat, but not a lot. Mostly it was vegetables, a lot of vegetables, lots of beans, like my mother did, and they did well with that. Red meats. Why red meats? Well, red meats have more cholesterol in it than others, as do eggs and some poultry. And so it's generally thought that chicken, fish like salmon that has lots of healthy oil in it would be a better choice if you're going to eat something with flesh. If you're going to eat something with eyes, with a mother, it's probably better to eat the fast-swimming fish like salmon that just swim upstream. They're very muscular, healthy fish. So though if you're going to eat meat, keep it small, keep the portion small, avoid red meat, poultry, red meat rather. Pork is not that good for you either, so I recommend that you omit that as well. Any small portions. When it comes to eggs, some people argue about this. I think that, again, in the time-tested look at how to eat, a few eggs a week is probably okay. And you want to talk to your doctor, see what your cholesterol is. If your cholesterol is high, you probably want to do that. Eggs do have a lot of nutrition. They do have a lot of B12, which is good for you, but keep it moderate. Okay. Now, on the other hand, and we can see this easily on the right side of that list there, eat lots of vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains, nuts, seeds, herbs, spices, mushrooms, water. The only thing that's not controversial there is water and probably spices and nuts. I say that because, again, I want you to consider this as we read about nutrition. One of the things that you'll see is that people say, if you eat a lot of vegetables, you have these anti-nutrients in there. So in other words, these are things that people say basically is a plant, the leaf does not want to be eaten. And so it has anti-nutrients there that make it less healthy and that block absorption of nutrients. Well, I think there's some truth to that, but if you wash off well, you cook them, you do certain things with them, you can reduce the amount of anti-nutrients and get the benefit from them. So there's some controversy about that, even about vegetables. I mean, we can argue about, collard greens, but there's some controversy there a little bit. But let's go back to the time-tested folks who I went to, and these blue zones, and they eat lots of vegetables, good amount of fruit, and lots of beans. So I feel comfortable saying, eat lots of vegetables, fruits, and beans. Now, what about fruits, though? It gets a little controversial here. One thing to understand about fruits and sugar in general is that fruit is made from, or not as sugar in it, not just glucose, but also fructose. Fructose is the fruit sugar. Fructose gets a little controversial because, especially when people eat sweet drinks, though, more than eating fruit, because fructose is a sugar, a natural sugar, where in excess it actually can do some damage to your liver. Now this would be very excessive. I'd be more concerned about this with fruity drinks rather than eating various kinds of fruit. In fact, apples are very, very good for you, as an example. Fruit's generally very good for you. So whether you like apples, an apple that keeps the doctor away is probably good advice. Whether you like mango or oranges, whatever the case is, I think you're in good ground, you're safe ground to eat some every day. I don't think that's a problem. Vegetables should even be a bit larger portion. But so realize that as you watch different experts about these things, some people will say fruit's not good for you. I think, Grandma was right. She told you to eat an apple, get some fruit. My father-in-law was from Jamaica, and he loved mangoes, and just whatever, those things are good for you. So you don't have to worry about fruit too much as long as you eat everything in moderation. Some people complain about grains. Well, if you have a gluten sensitivity, or some people have problems with that, very well. But otherwise, if you eat them in moderation, then you're fine. The problem with bread these days a lot of times is that it's so processed that when you eat it, you're really breaking it down in your mouth very quickly and it becomes more simple sugar. So that's the problem with grains. So what I recommend is, how about sweet potatoes? Or white potatoes too, but sweet potatoes, different kinds of grains would be very helpful for you. Yes, sir?
How about making your own bread?
That's more ambitious than I can go, but if you can do that, you have the skills, that's even better. You know exactly what goes in there, you keep the sugar level, if you put sugar and all in there, you know how healthy the wheat is, and I think it's a great idea, sir. I think if you're able to do that, that's wonderful.
That's one of the next classes, or one
Bread
of the other
making.
classes more promote also. It's a bread making class. That's what I mentioned next.
Very good, very good. Now let me ask you, how long does it take to make bread? Can the average person like me do that?
Quick.
Yes.
Yes, very good.
Yes, and putting me on the spot, but it's a process. You got to let it rise and then put it back in the oven. But maybe an hour or so, maybe a little more. But it's able. You could do that.
It's doable. Okay,
Yeah.
it's doable. Very good. That's encouraging.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So, did you say a sweet potato is a grain? No, did I? No.
Well, it's a grain. It's a complex carbohydrate. So it's not like obviously wheat or barley, but I'm putting that into complex carbohydrate. So usually I turn it a little bit loosely.
Oh.
And I try to eat that much bread, but I'd rather make some sweet potatoes. And we can talk about how the best way is to eat it, and get the details about whether you boil things, whether you put them in the oven and so forth. And as you learn, the main thing is not to get too worried about every detail. But as you learn, you'll glean a little here and a little there, and say, I think I'll boil this, and I think I'll saute this, and so forth. So that just comes along with time. But the nice thing about sweet potatoes is that they're orange, lots of nutrition there. There's some nutrition in the skin, and it's just a good, healthy thing. Probably better than your bread that you get off the shelf. No, I'm sorry. It's certainly better than the bread you get off the shelf in the grocery store. Other thoughts about that? But you can put into that, as we talk about that, colorful dishes are important. So in other words, remember to include your orange color, like sweet potatoes, like carrots, like the orangish sort of peppers that you get. Your diet really shouldn't be a rainbow of colors, because all those things are really healthy things that you need, like beta-carotene, for example, different vitamins and so forth.
So orange food is good for you.
Orange food is good for you, but so is blue, or purple, well, no, it's not purple. Blue, deep blue, and black, like blackberries, and yellow,
Green.
and, I'm sorry?
Green and yellow.
Green and yellow and red, or purple-ish, what color is a beet? It's
Red.
red, yes, I'm sorry, red, okay. Red like
But
beets,
they have the purple potato.
the purple potato.
Yeah.
That's right.
Iron.
You had a lot of iron.
Yeah.
Very good stuff for you. Yes. I think I saw another hand.
Yes,
ma'am.
so I guess the most, I've been on like a fitness and health journey. My husband, he recently was diagnosed with high cholesterol. And they're encouraging a high protein, high fiber diet. And I've been doing high protein, high
Yeah.
fiber. So I guess the most shocking thing that I found about this was not like encouraging meat, in particular lean chicken, like chicken breast or like turkey. Is there really something wrong with eating that?
I'm glad you asked that question.
I know, because.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
did you say
I
that
don't
he was
eat it,
diagnosed with high cholesterol and they're telling him to eat meat? Is that what you're saying?
Well, just chicken and no, like not as much red meat, definitely not the processed stuff like bacon, ham, stuff like that. So I'm pushing more chicken, less processed meats.
Well, you're doing very well to have the processed meats because those cause all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
From increased risk for cancer, probably heart disease and various things, and increasing cholesterol.
Yeah.
Again, here's where you can enjoy a little controversy here. Some people say a vegan diet's the very best diet. It's a little debatable. I think it's a very good diet for some people. Some people may not get nutrition from it. Chicken is a very good amount of protein, and it's leaner, so you get raw protein with less fat, less cholesterol,
Yeah.
and that's good in that sense. So I think that's a good choice for someone who's trying to eat meat, more protein, and less fat, less cholesterol. So I think that's a very good choice in that sense. Some people are concerned about meat and its effect in the long run on health. I don't know if there's really great evidence for that.
Okay.
I think that when it comes to nutrition, and please feel free, because some people may totally disagree with me, and that's okay. I think that nutrition research gets very complex, just like about drinking alcohol. I don't think there's no question in my mind that you don't drink alcohol, don't start alcohol. If you drink it, scale back.
Yeah.
But some people feel very strongly that we need some meat, and the reason for meat, frankly the advantage, is that it doesn't have the lignins and things that may interfere with nutrient absorption. It is very much concentrated protein, and for a lot of folks it's more bioavailable. So the protein is absorbed more easily perhaps than it is from, let's say, beans. So this really is a balance, and I don't mind saying that there's a little controversy there, and so I hope we're not offending anybody who's a vegan, and not leaning towards meat eating. I'm just saying, just try to be the messenger here. As I look at these things, you hear experts on both sides. I think that if in moderation, my view is that in moderation, you're probably doing well for your husband with the chicken there. Now could he eat lots more beans? Well, you've got bodybuilders that are vegans.
Yeah.
My only concern with any diet that's extreme, let's say vegan extreme as in no meat at all, there are no meat products. I mean, it's a bad thing to do, but on any end of it, of the spectrum, there's some people who may not be able to get enough bioavailability. So maybe a great diet for some. I've worked with a nurse who's a vegan, she's in great shape, but someone else who might be a vegan might not get enough absorption. So I think part of this is just individual. So the good thing is that he's probably getting his cholesterol checked on a regular basis. So in terms of cholesterol, that's good. And in terms of energy, how he feels. So for whatever it's worth, I cannot criticize, nor would I, and I can't say, well, it's a great thing to do. I can say it sounds like a very reasonable thing to do, especially since you want protein and you want low cholesterol. I don't think anyone should fault you for it.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that his cholesterol gets into better control. And by the way, part of the thing with cholesterol and the unhealthy fat is that people get too much sugar and too much bread that breaks down into sugar. So if you're eating healthy protein and lots of vegetables and keep the carbohydrates kind of low, that's better overall for them too. So want to get a good report about how his cholesterol comes down and his health is improved. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yes, thank you.
Other things here. Nuts actually are good for you. And just quickly going through seeds. Some people like eating seeds, some people don't. But they have lots of nutrition there. Iron and various kinds of things like magnesium. Then these things, these smaller nutrients like manganese, all these selenium, all these kind of things that some people try to replace with vitamins. You do much better if you get this in natural foods. Mushrooms. I can't say I know a lot about mushrooms. I just hear they're really good. I just wouldn't go pick them myself if you're not really sure what you're doing. But the portobello mushrooms, the button mushrooms in stores, those I think are pretty good for you. I don't think you need to be too concerned about that. And they have lots of nutrition as well. And again, I don't mind a little controversy. There may be those who disagree with that. But please, let's bring thoughts there.
No, I was just thinking about the nuts. I think another benefit of just the plant kingdom, if you want to say it like that, is also how it could zone in on different areas as far as the healing benefits. Because from what I remember, walnuts are very good for the brain.
Yes,
right?
indeed.
So sometimes if we incorporate some of these things into our diet, it could be restorative.
Yeah,
Especially
true.
the plant-based stuff also.
Right. And as I talk about these again, I'm trying to remain as neutral as possible. Again, when it comes to diet, things get very, very controversial.
Yeah.
As you point out, though, I think, for example, the blue zones in Loma Linda, California, the blue zone there, they eat lots of nuts and seeds and are very healthy. And actually, they were at a disadvantage because we were in Southern California when they were doing this study. I'm not sure, but I think if you've ever been to Loma Linda, California, the smog will roll in from the Los Angeles area. And so these people have done really well, despite being in an urban area, with lots of smog.
Wow.
So that's really quite impressive
Yeah.
when you consider that. Nuts and seeds again have lots of the micronutrients that we need and are very, very good for you. Also, we mentioned herbs. Turmeric, for example, is an excellent one. There are other herbs that are very good. And if you add a little, as I'm saying, add a little black pepper, not too much, but a little black pepper is absorbed better. So there are lots of herbs that we see in healthy foods. And for example, in different cultures, but especially look at Indian food, there's lots of really good herbs there, including turmeric, which is well used. I think I saw a hand over here
So
just now.
the mushrooms, so I have a friend that he studies mushrooms, and there's like a zillion mushrooms out there that do like everything. So hooks on drinking mushroom coffee. And I don't drink coffee at all, like in general. And it's kind of good. And, like I drink it and I say to myself, is it working like they say it's supposed to work? I don't know. But I do feel I get a little bit more energy and stuff. So I'm like, it's from the coffee. It's just not like heavy. But they say like the whole thing of mushrooms now. It's like there's so many different mushrooms out there that do so many different things for you that it's like.
You remind me of something. Thank you for telling us about the mushroom coffee. We have to go to Whole Foods and take a look at that. But thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
I want to make a comment about these kinds of maybe more exotic things that people drink. I'll get back to it. Let's get this question.
I just wanted to add in terms of the cholesterol, lack of sleep also, because I don't eat meat. I haven't in 30 years, but my blood work showed a slightly elevated cholesterol level. And what the lifestyle physician said, because I'm not sleeping those 8 hours,
Yeah.
it affects the liver, which affects the, so that's why my cholesterol is also elevated. So sleep is also important to reduce cholesterol.
Yes, ma'am. And now you can encourage, not yourself and me as well. I tend to not get enough sleep. And so, but yes, that's right. Sleep does a lot of special things that happen. Cholesterol is produced more, as I understand it, during sleep. And so eating late at night is something you want to try to avoid as well. That's absolutely true. And so the one thing about all these things is, I think that as we learn about nutrition, for example, everything in lifestyle, we're really only scratching the surface. We have no idea, I think, how good it is to have good nutrition, how bad it might be to not get nutrition, how good it is to get good sleep, and maybe how bad it is to not get good sleep. And so part of this is an issue of faith. We've been given healthy food and diet and counsel on this. Let's make sure that we do our best here because, we have no idea how 10 years or 20 or 30, 4 years down the road, eating that good diet, healthy diet now is making a difference for the good later on. So this is really important. and I mentioned with regards to mushroom coffee, there are all sorts of new things, and some are fads and some aren't, and it's just hard to tell what's what. I would say when it comes to all these things that come along, just use common sense. Make sure you know what the ingredients are.
Yeah.
And look at risk versus benefits. If it's a healthy kind of mushroom that mushrooms they're using, and it's coffee and it doesn't have a lot of caffeine in it, partly caffeine can be, again, it's a little controversial, but obviously if something interferes with your sleep or makes you too irritable, it's probably not worthwhile. The other thing is that if you get enough sleep, you probably don't need caffeine very much. And so, not to be too harsh on caffeine or caffeine or coffee drinks or anything, but if you get enough sleep, life is exciting enough. But sometimes, people feel like they need a cup of coffee. But coffee, caffeine is you might consider it a quote drug or substance because it's not nutrition of itself, but it does get people kind of perked up. And so another thing to consider is the decaf coffee for those who want some. I recommend that caffeine is probably not very good for you overall. Get enough sleep. You probably don't need enough sleep. Exercise. You probably don't need it. But no criticism towards those who have some coffee. And mushroom coffee, I'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, I know, it's weird, again, when they first gave it, it was like about 3-4 years back, that, they gave it to me, and then the particular brand is now one of the more prominent brands that they suggest people drink, so I was like, oh, okay, so I guess they've been alright for the last, like, 4 years, but I don't drink like every day, I've been drinking like once a month, or something like that, just to like, kind of, yeah.
That brings up the fact that there's so many different things that are put forth as healthy things. This sounds like it's probably one of them, but how do you keep up with it? And sometimes people become discouraged. Take a step at a time. You don't have to be perfect. You don't just have to be perfect. Use good principles. Read the labels. And over time, you just, so it's a process of learning, but you don't have to become a PhD in food in order to have a healthy diet. You want the basics though, sleep and nutrition and stress reduction. And if you, again, believe the Harvard folks, so close social connection. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I don't want to take over the presentation, but
No,
just to piggyback on what you said, we have bodies, we should be able to take care of it, and sometimes the way it can be presented by what we see, all the information we get, makes it so complex. But we should be able to take command of that and just follow simple things. And like you said, look at nature, look at your mom and your grandmother and how they live. Look at the blue zones. It's simple. Just apply what you can and see how you can be blessed by it.
That's right, absolutely. That reminds me of sometimes you'll see infomercials, and I watch them sometimes about health because you might glean a little bit from it. But it's always kind of interesting when they say that here's a good food for you, but you have to have our blend of it in order to get the right nutrients from it. And the only place this comes from is from the Atlas Mountains of Morocco, or it's a sort of place in the valley there, and they've got just the right avocado. They have just the perfect kind of olives there, the perfect kind of olive oil. And if you're not getting that, you're really not getting good olive oil. And God bless the folks who are, maybe they're sincere, maybe they're right, I'm not sure. But somehow it seems to me that you have 7.5 billion people, there's 8 billion people in the world. I don't think we all have to go to that particular place to get good olive oil. So you have to take those things in perspective. And so you don't have to be an expert in all these things. Our bodies do, our bodies are able to take good food, healthy food, and live well without all the nuances and all the specific things that some people would say we have to have. Another thought, another question. Let's take if we have time, how are we doing time-wise? Maybe a little more time before we do a simple sort of, it's not really a quiz, it's more of a self-assessment. Let's take a little bit of a look here at activity. Basic principles of activity. Number one, remember, activity is not just jogging. People jog and they might think that's enough activity, but it's not quite. You want to have good aerobic activity, whatever kind you like, good weight training, and that could be free weight, whether you like push-ups or chin-ups or whatever the case is, or work out with machines in the gym, whichever you like. you want to have stretching. That's kind of understated. But being able to have good flexibility is good long-term in life. You want exercise that you like, and preferably do it outside, fresh air, and that you enjoy. My mother was telling me, I was asking her, what do you guys do for activity? And she said, well, they played outside. This is in North Carolina back in the day. They played outside. They did double dutch and hopscotch and things like that for 2 hours. Well, that's pretty good. If you're being out there and getting lots of exercise, as long as you're regular, consistent with it, that's good. You see, if you look at the videos, you have all sorts of ways of doing push-ups. You got the diamond push-ups, and you got the, this kind of push-up, and all these different kinds of chin-ups and so forth. It's okay if you don't know every single kind, as long as you're consistent and doing it on a regular basis. That's the important thing. And have some accountability to make sure you actually get up there and do it. And these days, unfortunately, we see things, we watch TV at all, we'll see other people working out. The way our brains work, if we see something, there may be sort of an unconscious belief that we're actually doing it, or feeling as though we've actually done it. Well, that's fine. You have the sneakers and you're watching someone do a great aerobic exercise or something. But unless you're doing it yourself, it's not doing much good. It just feels like you've been there because you're watching it. So that's why, make sure that you schedule it at a time that you think you're actually going to do it, and get out and get in the pool or running track or whatever it is that you do. A few things about exercise that are important. When you're doing aerobic exercise, obviously your heart rate is faster, and although when your heart rate goes up, there's a small increased risk of a heart attack, for example, because our heart rate's faster, but that's very unlikely. The net result is a much greater improvement in cardiovascular health. Heart that's stronger, that beats slower, and when our hearts relax, that's actually rest for your heart. Just like if you're running, you do a sprint and then you take a slower walk, and you're getting some rest there. The heart actually exercises and relaxes. And that's its actual rest, because it's beating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, your entire life. From the time that you were an embryo, or whatever that exact stage where your heart started beating, well, it's been doing that all these years. What a miracle that is. And so, but every time it rests, every time it expands, that's actually your heart's rest. So if your heart rate is 80, that's that's okay, it's considered okay, 80 beats per minute. But if you can get down to 70 or 65 or even 60, and really well-trained athletes have even lower heart rates. I don't think you need it. A lot of people, there are people who have 45 beats per minute heart rate, not suggesting that specifically. But if your heart rate is 65 or 62, that really means that your heart is getting more rest between beats. That's a good thing. So that's where aerobic exercise comes in. What about weight training? Weight training is a really interesting thing. We need it more than we might realize. We probably had it more back in my mom's day when people lifted things more and didn't have such conveniences as we do now. And when we exercise, remember the legs. Sometimes we think about exercising the upper body, and people bench pressing and so forth. That's kind of the big glamorous thing. And how much can you bench press? Well, how much you leg press or how much you do with your legs is important. It's important for your bone health. When you go out and run or walk, every time your foot pounds in the pavement, it does a little bit of molding of your long bones, so your bones are healthier. So that helps reduce the risk of osteoporosis as you get older. So you feel better and your bones are stronger with time. When we lift weights, there's something that's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Now what's that? Basically, our muscles, when they contract, like when you do physical exercise, when you do weight training, it releases this chemical that actually goes to the brain. And in the brain, it helps improve the creation of new brain cells. Now, you may have heard, well, brain cells you don't get any more. That's not quite true. There's at least a particular area of the brain where it's called hippocampus. It's where we have our memory is a big part of the memory center. And new cells actually do develop in that area. So not every area of the brain, but in that area that is largely responsible for memory, new cells do grow. And so the big muscle work they do, kind of straining to do a leg lift, or you're doing your bench press or shoulder press, or you're doing your chin-ups, whatever you're doing, the muscle activity there actually helps your brain, it helps your memory. So we won't put the whole package together. So if you're not doing some strong, kind of grunting a little bit, kind of weight training, or body activity, body weight training, encourage you to start. That's really important. And do what you like. I mean, some people love the weights and love the gym and the kind of, there got these mirrors in the gym, so you got to look at yourself as you're walking around. No offense, but I don't really like weights that much. I just couldn't get into it, but I like more body weight exercise. Whatever it is, it should be hard. If you can do it 20 or 30 times, that's not hard enough. You should be able to do this maybe 10 times or less, or 7 or 8 times before you have to stop and rest. So you want to get that good resistance training, whatever it is. Some people like using bands, whatever the case is. Let's see, I suggest, maybe somebody likes using bands. Flexibility is important. And weight training, especially for the legs, and resistance training for the legs, and flexibility will help you as you get older because we want to avoid falling. Unfortunately, the thing that happens for folks sometimes is a fall, maybe a slip and fall, or legs that have gotten a little bit less strong with age. And a hip fracture, for example, is a really devastating thing. If you have a family member or God forbid you've had it yourself, and it takes a long time to heal, and sometimes that's a real problem. And so the better your balance is, the stronger your legs are, then the less likely to have that, and the more you can maintain independence as you go a little further. God bless those who, not criticizing anyone who doesn't have that situation, but we want to try to maintain legs. There's a saying that the legs go first. So as people get a little bit older, it may be more of a problem with the legs with balance than upper body. Excuse me. And so those things fit together. Excuse me. And make sure it's fun. If you don't have fun with it, you're not going to stick with it very long. Yeah. And so, like for me, for swimming, my father was an inspiration to me. He swam for years, even into his older years, and swimming at the YMCA. I need some more accountability for myself. So he's an inspiration, but I need some more accountability to actually get there, especially since I have to get there early in the morning before work. And so, getting there at 6 o'clock in the morning, I just have to, I'll admit to you all that that's a challenge for me, but one that's worth doing.
For all of us.
I'm sorry?
For all of us too.
For all of us, yes. Well, pick the time of day that works best for you. If I could go swim at noontime, that would be great, but I can't. I'm with my job. But find what works best for you, have accountability, and actually get it done. Okay, not just think about it, actually get it done. All right.
Stress reduction.
I'm sorry?
Stress reduction. I'm interested to hear what you do.
Oh, okay. We talk about social connection a little bit. We're gonna go from, we talk about social connection, stress reduction. And we actually have talked about risky substances and, so let's go to stress reduction. I think we're probably good timing here, because afterwards we want to go through a little exercise, or actually more of a planning session for yourself. And I think we have a few of those in Spanish. We only like in Spanish, otherwise in English. And we want you to go through and plan out your exercise programs. We want to be realistic about where you're really right now, and not where you want to be. Like right now, I'd like to swim a mile at a time. I do not swim a mile. I'm sorry? Oh, thank you.
That's no amazing.
Okay, great, the short form here. But we want to assess where we really are, have realistic goals, and then reassess those goals periodically. So you can start out with a small goal that you know you can accomplish. Hopefully what happens is if you start with a small goal, let's say you just want to walk 1 mile. You haven't done much exercise, you want to walk a mile or half a mile. You might find that as you're out there, I can keep going a little bit, make it 3/4 of a mile or a mile. But keep that goal so you will always make that goal. It was just half a mile, and again, then at a certain point, you reassess it and go forward. But before we get into detail, let's talk about stress reduction. We talked about how important stress reduction is. We live very stressful lives compared to my mother, and towards maybe your mother or grandmother. And just the little ways of being under stress that we never had before. When we were down in, my family and I went down to Hallsborough, North Carolina, it was amazingly quiet. No noise, no trucks, no sirens. You just fell asleep like a baby and woke up completely refreshed. No noise, no stress. It was wonderful. There's still a place like that to live in, but probably not right here, not where I grew up. I mean, not where a lot of you grew up. And there's stress that we experience because of what's going on in the world. If you watch what's going on these days, there's a certain amount of stress that just comes from watching the news. I love watching the news. I love seeing what's going on in the world. Trying to be well informed. But there's a certain amount of stress that we experience just because we're watching things that are not good. There's something, and we won't go into a lot of detail, but there's something, a topic that I really appreciate, especially working with veterans in the past, called moral injury. And moral injury is kind of like soul injury. In other words, if someone does something that's out of character and they wish they hadn't done it, if someone sees something that's an atrocity or something that's bad that shouldn't have been done, we may experience at least a little bit of moral injury, and that's stressful. And so we have to realize that we need to, even if we don't feel stressed, it's good to have mechanisms or things to do to reduce stress, because we're probably under more stress than we realize. And if you're ever maybe been someplace, maybe at work, and you go out, and you go out to a park, or you go to someplace that's really restful, and maybe you've noticed this, I sort of have, you go someplace and you do this. You find out, you didn't realize that your shoulders were hunched up, that you were maybe breathing a little, your oxygen flow was a little bit, your tidal volume, if you will, in your lungs was a little bit more shallow, and then you say that, then you stop and you go, you were probably stressed and didn't really realize it until you got to a place that's really relaxing. And so there's good stress, which is a certain amount of stress that we need to get motivated. If we had no stress, we wouldn't do anything. But bad stress is when it exceeds our abilities, or there's underlying stress that we really can't control, and that increases our cortisol level and so forth. So a couple of things that we can do, and you'll see this at the bottom there, you can read that on your handout. Part of stress reduction is looking at events differently, or from a different angle. Consider, is there another way to look at this situation? And remember that it's not helpful to focus on what we cannot change. Try to improve your mood by looking at what is going well in life, focus on your accomplishments, or what you have overcome. So that's a general principle. I'd like to share a technique, if you will, that can help reduce stress. Now, there are many that you can use. Now this is one, nothing metaphorical or any particular connotation to it other than just kind of physiologically what you can do. And so if you'd like to participate, my suggestion is we do this right now. Let's say you're feeling under stress, maybe you came home and you're stressed from work, or maybe you can't get to sleep. Well, this is the one where I can tell you that actually works. The dog and twirling my palms and sitting by the freeway. So what you do is something like this. Everybody ready to participate?
Yes.
Okay, there's no unusual connotation to this, it's just physiology. So first of all, just take a few deep breaths. Now these aren't hyperventilating, we're not going to hyperventilate, pass out. We're just nice, relaxed, you're nice and loose, you're sitting comfortably, take a few deep breaths. Now, the object of this is that if we focus on what's happening right here and right now, it's kind of hard to be stressed. I can take a moment to remember when you were a youngster, before you started wearing a watch. We didn't have a cell phone. Now there's maybe some here who always had a cell phone, I don't know. But think about if you have no watch, no cell phone, have no cell phone, and you're playing with your friends, you're doing something you really enjoy doing, and there's nothing else going on in the world except what you're doing at that moment. You don't know what time it is. Which, by the way, if you want to sleep well, hide the clock. You don't know what time it is. You know what time it is. You're not thinking about dinner. You're thinking about absolutely nothing else that needs to be done. You're just totally in the flow, if you will, of what you're doing right now. So, the simple thing to do is this. We want to use each of our senses to appreciate where we are right now at this moment. So, think of it this way. What you see, you can actually use your head as an example. What you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you smell, and what you taste. Okay? So there's 5 basic senses here. What you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you smell, and what you taste. So, get nice and relaxed. And you can actually keep your eyes open. And just notice, and someone can do it out loud, but just notice 5 things, and focus now, 5 things that you can see. And we need one volunteer. Who will say those? As we look around, we're going to see different things, but whatever you focus on. But can someone do that as a volunteer for us? Who wants to do that? What 5 things? What 5 things do you see?
I'm seeing the plants behind you. I'm seeing you. I'm seeing the screen, I'm seeing the podium, and I'm seeing the mirror and the word joy.
Okay, very good. And so it's very good, and take it nice and slow as you say that, and focus on those things. Who wants to do 5 things that you can hear? Anybody? Just tell us 5 things that you hear, nice and slowly, and focus on them. Yes, ma'am. What are 4 things? 4 things that you hear.
Your voice, the birds, the traffic, and it sounds like a vent.
Okay.
Projector. The projector.
Okay.
Projector? Okay. Would someone please tell us, thank you very much, ma'am. Excellent. Would someone please tell us 3 things that you feel? 3 things right now that you feel.
Relaxed.
Very good, Ellen. You feel that within that's you're way ahead of us. Can you please tell us 3 things that you physically feel in your body.
The chair, it's hard. The air's warm. The papers.
Papers in your hands. Okay, very good, very good. Can someone please tell us 2 things that you smell? Anybody? 2 things that you smell.
Should have burned a candle first. I don't smell a thing.
That one's tough.
That's
I
tough.
guess,
like a little tough.
I guess the like air in here and then my shampoo.
Huh? Very good. So sometimes as we get to that point, it's kind of the air sort of, and shampoo, and hopefully, well, we can, yeah.
Perfume.
Hopefully you put on your,
Good body
deodorant, but so I've talked to some folks and it's like, yeah, I smell mine,
You just smell the air freshener.
Air freshener, yeah.
Going
That's
on
right.
by you.
Can someone tell us 1 thing that you taste? 1 thing that you taste right now? Chewing gum. Very good.
I was gonna say my saliva.
And that's a very good answer too. Sometimes as well, saliva, or I had something to eat, earlier. Very good. How does everyone feel right now? Relaxed, more relaxed. I'm trying to leave. I hope you feel more relaxed. But the point is, though, that it's hard to be anxious or have stress. You're focusing on 1 thing at one time, without judging it, without saying this is good or bad. I just see the mirror. See the person there. I just feel the lectern and the papers here. I smell, the air, shampoo or deodorant and so forth. Your mind is distracted, but interestingly, your mind is distracted, but it's focused. The same way, and I remember when I was a kid, we used to play, we used to
Hear the birds.
hear the birds just now. That's a wonderful thing to hear. When we were kids, we used to break into sort of, there's a place across the street, there was a hospital, and we had no business there, but we would go in there and play football or baseball and get chased out by the police. But while we were there, it was amazing. They didn't have a watch, they didn't have a cell phone. Mom wasn't calling to come home and eat dinner. She never did. Eventually, we drifted home. It was light enough out that we weren't thinking of what time of day it was, and we were just playing baseball. And that was all that was going on. And the whole world was playing baseball or football, talking to your friends. And that was it. And that's something that we've forgotten to do, or don't take enough time to do. But even as adults, it's very, very doable. If you spend a few times a day, and how long does this take us? I wasn't looking at my watch, but about 5 minutes. If you break up your day, especially if you're feeling stressed, take a few minutes, and it's worthwhile investing the time, to think about what you're experiencing right then and there. That brings relaxation and reduced stress, because you're not living in the future, anxiety about things. You're not living in the past, being unhappy about something maybe you did or didn't do well that day. You're simply living in the present. Now, many ways you can do it. We did 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You might want to do 5, 5, 5, 5. You can do it very different ways, but you practice living the present. And I think that as you practice that on a regular basis, it'll become natural to be right here. And so as you're talking to someone, you're used to talking to this person, and not talking to someone but thinking about what you're going to do 10 minutes later. So it would make you a better conversationalist, a better friend and so forth, but it also helps having a more relaxed life. And the other thing is that when you have things to do, this doesn't mean to just, do stress reduction all day long. When it's time to do the things you need to do, you're more focused, you're more relaxed, and you can focus on those things. And if you have a tendency to worry about things, well, you can say, I'm just not going to worry. But I think if you use this kind of approach, and even the better, meditating on God's Word, I believe, reading the Psalm, reading whatever you got in God's Word, and focusing on it, then you can give yourself a little permission. Okay, I tend to worry about things and worry about this or that, but I'm going to take this time now to reduce stress. I'll give myself permission to worry later, but that's later. I'll take this focus on this now. And I think we'll find over time is that you've learned to focus and relax enough so that worry that you might have in the future, you give yourself permission to do, you probably won't worry as much. It's just a lifestyle habit. One of my favorite Christian authors writes that we should have gratitude, which science shows is good for the heart. And a good time to do it, in addition to whatever other time you want to do it, is while you're eating. Eat slowly with gratitude. So use this mindfulness, if you will, as you eat, for example. As you eat, you're looking at this food, this great food that you're getting, right? All the nutrients in it. And eat slowly, and smell it, and feel it, and taste it, and enjoy the company that you're in. And that will help reduce stress too. I've not practiced that very well. I tend to wolf food down. So it takes some effort, but it's doable. So meal times is a good time to do that. And by the way, when I use the word mindfulness, I'm not talking about anything transcendental. I'm not trying to judge anyone, but this is strictly what we just did. It's being mindful of what you're actually doing at that time.
Yeah.
That's what, your mind is where you are at that time. That's what we mean by mindfulness. I hope that gets to what you were referring to. And I'm glad you mentioned that because that's one of the most important things we do today. There's so much distraction, so much noise that it's difficult to reduce
Especially
stress.
the deep breathing, I'm glad you brought that up too.
Yes.
I gotta try.
And there are different ways of doing it. Let me give you an example for fun. I hope I'm not running too much over time. But when I was in the Navy in 29 Palms, it was a great privilege to serve there. And there's a big Marine Corps base, and so I was a psychiatrist there at that Marine Corps base. And there was a lady there who, next door neighbor, fine person, who had a German Shepherd, some little dog that she had outside. So you have these ranch-style houses, and just several yards away, there's this German Shepherd outside barking. Well, as you can imagine, the dog is out there 10, 11 o'clock, 11:30, and the dog is barking, and I'm getting upset and anxious, and got to get up in the morning at 5:30, come on. So I went over to talk with this lady. I said, ma'am, I know dogs like to be outside, but the dog is barking late in the evening. I'm really sorry, but can you bring the dog in because it's hard to sleep? Now she was she could have said no, but she was very considerate and said, okay. So then I could sleep again, it was quiet, everything was cool. Well, one night, for whatever reason, the dog was back outside, barking again. And I thought, well, you know what? Dogs like to get outside. This is the weather, it's the desert, it's not snow outside, it's nice weather. And maybe he's just an outside dog, and so that's okay, I can understand that. So I tried something else. And it was essentially mindfulness. I didn't know what to call it then, but I decided, rather than be upset about this dog barking all this time, I decided I would listen to the dog. Be mindful, I would listen to this dog very carefully. The dog barked, I would listen to its pitch, it was a little higher pitch. I would listen to the quiet between the barks, and I would anticipate the barking. And so by doing that, it didn't surprise me, I didn't get upset about it, and I thought, well, dog's just doing what it does. I wasn't angry at the dog, dogs do what they do. They're outside, and they bark, and eventually they stop. And so I'd listen and listen and listen. I would listen to the quiet between the dog's barks, listen to the bark itself, and eventually I fell asleep right as the dog was barking.
You're counting sheep, you're counting
Yeah.
barks.
I was counting barks.
It's funny you say that because I just said the same thing yesterday because I just look around her and it's the dogs that bark there. And he's saying that, he goes, I just started listening, he says the dogs were having a conversation, it was like 3 barks, 2 barks, 1 bark, no bark, and then you heard 1, 2, 3, that, like boom, 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 barks. So, and he was trying to sleep, and that's what he was doing, listening to
counting
the barks of the dogs.
That works, yeah. Let me tell you one other, I really enjoyed, if I can tell you this one. Not too long ago, I was doing a local tennis, doctor working in the place, temporarily. This was up in Michigan. And it hasn't happened to be, I was staying in one of these long-term stay hotel complexes. And it happened to be along US Highway 131 or something. Now, when I looked at the map, I thought, this may not be that good, this is right by the freeway. But I went ahead and tried it. And you could see interstate, or US Highway 131, like right out the window, the cars and trucks and buses going by. I thought, this is not too cool. I'm not going to sleep tonight. Just cars and buses and, where are all these people coming in this late at night? Where are these guys going? So, having had the experience with the dog in California, I decided to try something. I thought, let me listen very carefully to each car, or as much as I can, to the cars and the buses and the trucks. So I said, okay, I'm not going to be upset, I'm just going to listen. And pardon me, I thought I'd say this. This is going to be kind of, well, not good acting, but anyway. If you hear a motorcycle going down the road, it sounds like this. Right? If you hear a truck, it goes. A car goes. Something like that. I don't think there are buses out there.
Yeah, here. There are.
I think there are many buses out there. And so what I decided to do, I'm just going to listen. All night it takes. I'm just going to listen. And so I hear a motorcycle go by. And I would hear it coming along. And I would listen to it as it passed by. And I would listen to it for as long as I could. All the way down the road. Maybe it was a mile down. And I would just listen to it until it faded out. And then I'd listen to the next thing. It was a truck. It was a car. And I just listened. But with intention, I was just being mindful. Hey, there's a car, there's a motorcycle, there's a truck. And I thought, you know what, this is great. I'm going to fall asleep anytime. Well, I didn't. I probably was 4 hours. I did not get to sleep that night. I had to go to work the next day. But this was a very restful night's sleep. I didn't sleep, it was a very restful evening. I didn't actually sleep, but it was still restful. Because I used this basic technique of mindfulness.
Instead of getting upset.
Instead of being upset, I didn't complain. I think eventually I changed it to a different hotel. But for that particular evening, I was able to rest because of mindfulness. Just a stress reduction technique, just a technique of being focused. And this guy on a motorcycle, he's wearing his helmet, and the truck are going by, and a car, and so it works. So if you feel stressed, remember, when you're a kid, whenever you're playing, whatever you did, hopscotch or double dutch or whatever it was, you can remember those things or just use a basic technique of just listening and feeling and seeing. And that will help reduce stress.